Season 2, Episode 2 of IDS, Intrusion Diversity System. You have myself, Doug Bryant Jr.
And I'm O'Shea Bowens. How's it going?
Going good, man. Get ready for Thanksgiving. What about you?
Oh my God, just got back from the store. It was hell. I shouldn't say hell. But it was one of those things. Like I usually go like hella early. Like I'm like one of those people. Like I shop in my house. Like my wife, I love my wife. Like she's the best. But I wouldn't like trust her to make popcorn. So like
Oh, man.
I do all the cooking. It's just real talk, man. I do all the cooking. So I like actually love going to the grocery store. It's like kind of therapeutic for me. But I just waited till like 5 o'clock to go, and it was a madhouse there, like just utterly ridiculous. So, but I'm pumped. Start cooking tomorrow, man.
That's good, man. Awesome. Yeah, I'll be helping my wife cook tomorrow. We having a lot of things, ham, all that kind of stuff, greens.
Yeah, usually, actually, what's odd is like my family typically does. I'm not in Dallas right now, like I'm in Boston, so I'm not with my family. But we typically do a seafood Thanksgiving. So it's like different from most people. Like we have like crab and like crab stuff. I mean crab stuffing, like some lobster, like a lot of shrimp. Like it's like there's like a ridiculously small like turkey breast, and that's it. Like there's usually not like turkey. So this will be the first year I've actually done this at home. Like since I moved to Boston. So it'll be
Okay.
a small family thing. You know, like myself, my daughter, and my granny here. She's just flew in from Dallas. So keeping it small, man.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Well, I know for me, I'll be talking about Magecart hitting Macy's and the Disney Plus hack. What do you got for us tonight?
Black Mirror turns to real life, man. Like
Uh-oh.
it's scary stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was uh I was online. Actually, I was on Twitter like a couple of days ago, and I saw the video of this. Oh, have you seen that Black Mirror episode? It's called Metalhead. It's the one with like the robotic dog that has like sensors built into it, and it's basically like hunting down humans.
No, I haven't seen that one. I've seen other episodes, but not that one.
Yeah, it's all right. So it's well, first off, check that out. But it's like it's the craziest thing. So imagine like I mean, you've seen the videos where like with General, not like General Dynamics and like some of the
Yeah,
MIT
I've
labs.
seen those. I've seen those. Yeah.
Yeah, so basically, like imagine that. I mean, not General Dynamics, Boston Dynamics.
Boston Dynamics.
Yeah, so imagine one of those like equipped with like a gun, like heat, like a heat sensor. They can somehow like pick up a droplet of blood and like create a trail from it. Like it's like this weird, crazy, futuristic, like robotics. I don't know, nightmare. But apparently, since like I don't know, like July, Massachusetts State Police have been testing these robotic dogs. So they're calling them like they're basically called like spot robot dogs. And they are well, the Massachusetts State Police are mainly leveraging them for bomb squad type of missions, which isn't new. Like that's happened in I don't know if you remember that incident in Dallas, maybe I think it was like last year where that guy kind of unfortunately decided to like shoot at officers and then they detonated a bomb. They drove a bomb up to him and just detonated it. Like he was like tucked away in a pretty like secure location with a rifle and they couldn't get to him. So they like literally, you know, hopefully I don't offend anyone, but like attached a bomb to like a bomb disposal unit and like drove it up to him and then detonated the bomb. So these have been in play for a while, not with four legs. That one was more like a what do you call the like the rotor for a tank? That not the rotor. Like the tank has rotors, and then that. Uh, oh my god, what's on the bottom of a tank? I'm trying to think of the word here.
What, tracks maybe?
Yes,
Something like that?
tracks. Yeah, basically, yeah, it was a robot with tracks that essentially they leveraged for that. But no, I saw that earlier this week, and I was like, no, it's here. I was
Hmm.
like, I was like, this is. I was like, the Black Mirror just came out like earlier this year, and then
Slowly but
this
surely.
crap comes out.
Slowly but surely, man.
So not totally cyber related, but eventually, you know, naturally it's remotely controlled. So if it's
Yeah.
remotely controlled, it can be hacked. So I'm waiting for the day that you know maybe the next year or so that it comes out that someone's figured out how to tap into the frequency, or someone figured out how to like plug into it when it was powered down, or change something within the module and then leverage it for some even more nefarious use, I guess you could say.
Yeah. Everything's going online, man. I remember a few years ago there was an article about Barbie being Wi-Fi. Something I was reading. It's crazy. I'm like, how does that even work?
Like the doll.
Yeah. It was a Wi-Fi version of Barbie. It was crazy. I have to look it up and I'll send you a link, but it was pretty weird. Like, what do you
Yeah,
need Wi-Fi for Barbie?
that's freaking creepy.
Yeah, it is. Like,
Oh,
oh, yeah, child's play. So what's next?
right. I'll put the link in the chat room actually.
Yeah.
What's going on with you?
Not a whole lot, man. Just getting ready for Thanksgiving.
What's going on with
Like I
you?
said, got some good food coming up. Wife's doing a lot of stuff. Greens, macaroni and cheese. Heard that macaroni and cheese is pretty good. I can't eat it because I'm actually allergic to dairy, but heard it's pretty good. And yams. Got a turkey going and a couple of chickens and ham. So it should be good. Good time, man. Good time off. Just relax with the family. So
Oh, nice.
should be a good time. But yeah, I ran across this article a couple of days ago from Macy's. Based out of New York, huge department store. They were also hit by Magecart, just like Ticketmaster, the Atlanta Hawks team, and a few other website e-commerce websites were hit with the Magecart skimming attack. They announced this on October 15th, but they actually found out it actually happened on October 7th, and probably because the security team did a review of the files and noticed like the last modified date on one of the files in question. So it was actually injected on two pages. It was injected on their checkout page and what they call a wallet page, which is accessed through the My Account. So more likely, if anybody shopped between October 7th and 15th, probably a little bit before that, you might want to check your accounts. You probably were affected by this hack. Again, it was injected on October 7th. The code basically is designed to capture information from customers who go online and try to buy different items. But unfortunately, the data that were actually stolen included first and last names, physical addresses, email addresses, payment card numbers, the CVV code on the back, expiration dates. So a lot of information they gained from this Magecart attack. The overall numbers haven't been affected yet as far as the customers. They haven't really given out a definite number. They just keep saying a small subset of customers, but that's always going to come out, with more bigger number later. So, but these type of attacks normally happen when a website has some kind of vulnerability or a content management system has a vulnerability. So that's probably how they got in, actually.
For some people who may not have heard Maze Cards, you want to give them an idea of like who they actually are. Well, not who they
Yeah,
actually are, because no one knows. But
yeah. So Magecart is a large group. That's how they pretty much are defined. That actually has this malware that affects e-commerce sites, point of sale sites, where they actually inject code on the website. And what this code does actually, it captures payment information and it brings it back to a CNC server or command and control server, which then that information is actually sold on the dark web for clone cards, basically. And what you can do, clone cards, sell them to people on the dark web in bundles. I actually went on tour today and looked around at some of those sites. And one site I went to, pull up the picture real quick.
I thought you were gonna say. I thought you were gonna say you got some cards. I was like, dude, do not admit to that. Do not admit to that on the podcast.
No, man, no, that's not me. But I took a picture of the site that I went to. This guy was selling like cards with up to like $2,000, $3,000 credit limit for like $100, $150, all the way up to like $300 for like a $6,000 card with up to a $7,000 credit limit. So these sites are out there. I was kind of browsing out there, just looking, and just kind of crazy how fast and how much this happens. I mean, they take this information and put it out on tour, and people are actually able to buy these cards in bundles. So it's pretty intense there. But the file that was actually affected that they found was called the client-side error log, and this was the file that was actually tampered with to host the Magecart code. Once the payment details were submitted, the data was sent over to the C2 server hosted at barn-x.com.
Barn.ash.com.
Yeah, barn-x.com. So.
Huh. That's a cool name. That's like a cool URL. I don't know.
It really is. And there's a couple sites called barnxo.com that are totally different than what this site is. So I don't know if they're trying to like actually, um, you know, hijack some other domain, whatever. But I actually tried to go to barnx.com through a tool, and it went to a forbidden page, so it's not really up right now. So, but I thought this was pretty interesting, especially around this time of year. You got Black Friday coming up.
I was just thinking. I was like, this is when they go nuts with it.
Yeah, exactly. So we got this one pretty early, but I'm sure this is not the end of our Magecart for sure.
No, I think I've personally had to deal with some of their ridiculousness for like at least two clients. No, it just ramps up. I mean, I will give them credit; they're like relentless. It's like ridiculously relentless. I mean, apparently, and card stuff is not all that difficult at times too. I mean, credential stuff is not all that difficult. I mean, unless there's a specific timeout, or lockout, like you can go at it all day. So, I guess why not? Except for it's crazy illegal and disrupts people's lives.
Yeah, and they seem to hit the heavy hitters, man. They even went out to Newegg and a couple other sites. So like, I mean, a lot of sites that people frequent, have a lot of payment card information. They go out to those sites and actually have been pretty successful.
It'll keep me employed, so it's all good.
Yeah, exactly. That's how I look at it too.
Something else I actually ran across, which was actually, I felt like I related to this story because I've done this multiple times, especially when I've spun up different elk stack servers, kind of just like for research purposes, and I'll forget to tear them down like 2 days later or something along those lines. Not to this extreme, but on what day was it? This was back in October, actually. But some of the credentials or some of the accounts are starting to be linked to this particular story. So back in October, it was like October 15th or 16th. There was an Elasticsearch server that was found online. I think you heard this story too, but essentially they're stating that it was around like 1.2 billion people's information or people's data was exposed online due to this unsecured Elasticsearch server. There were a couple of researchers that linked it to uh, the people data labs, which is like an aggregator and enrichment company. So within like this cluster F word of everything that happened. Their stating it was around 3 billion PDL user records were associated with roughly 1.2 billion unique people. An archive uncovered 650 million unique email addresses and data belonging to three different PDL indexes were respectively scraped from, they're basically saying like LinkedIn, Twitter, GitHub URLs, things along those lines. I mean, GitHub URLs. So essentially, what it looks like is more people are starting to. I guess they weren't the only ones that actually found this, but more, we'll say, attackers or people that have nefarious ways of making money most likely found this database before these researchers reported it. Because why would you report it if there's close to that many users' information there? Like, why would you want them taking that down? And what
Hmm.
they looks like what they basically ran is like brute forces and almost like credential stuffing against most of the popular websites you would frequent. Your Facebook, your LinkedIn, or your Twitters. The GitHub one's kind of frightening because a lot of well, I know some companies and some individuals link projects they're working on for customers in their Git repository for like development and for feature development, whatever it may be from a code perspective. So I feel like that's more like the scary one. The Twitter stuff, yeah, you can get locked out of your account, or Facebook, you get locked out of your account and you have to start all over. But if someone gets into that your repo and you have like client data there,
Yeah.
that's freaking frightening to me. And I've done this before too. Like I've legit like spun up elk servers for research purposes. Like sometimes when I'm looking into a different, like a particular sample of malware, I'll stand up a separate honeypot environment and I'll forward those logs over to elk. I'll let that run for 4 or 5 weeks, and I'll get in and try to like normalize some of the data that's there from these particular from whatever was hidden that honeypot. And there's been a few different times I've personally, which I'll admit it, I'll put my hand in the air. I've stood up boxes that either I couldn't connect to or there was something misconfigured. And I was like, all right, I'll do that later. Like you're in the zone, like you're standing up a lab environment on the fly. You're in the zone. You're like, all right, that one's not working. I'll spin up another one and I'll tear that one down later. I don't want to like mess up my groove. I want to keep going. I want to keep going. And then like 2 or 3 weeks later, you come back to it and you're locked out of that like the server you stood up, and it's like, oh wait, like luckily I always like set up like two accounts in the box. Like it's just one of those things I learned kind of early on I was never a system administrator, but I just kind of learned like system administration on my own from standing up, building boxes at home. But one of the things I always had was, you had two accounts. You never just have one account on the box. So if something happens with, your user account, you still have that root account you can leverage. But I mean, there's been like a few different times I've tried to get back into boxes that were stood up within, AWS or DO, and I got locked out. I'm like, oh my god, someone got in, and like they changed all my stuff, so I had to go back and like pretty much like leverage my root credentials and then tear it down and and try to set a reminder to myself like, hey, you need better hygiene when you're running your research. Like eventually it's gonna link back to you, or maybe it has since I just talked about it. But in most of my where it's all for like most of it's from like non nefarious stuff. It's either for research I'm doing or for some type of like product development around like a new feature, stuff like that. It's never I'm jacking stuff online.
Yeah,
trying to stay
trying to
out of
stay
jail.
exactly. Yeah, trying to stay out of jail. That's a good practice to have two accounts though, just in case something happens to one.
Yeah, that's basic sec ops. You know,
Yeah,
you may get
I
locked
saw
out
an
of your own
article.
stuff.
Exactly. I saw an article in this well, briefly. It was saying that the guys that discovered it, they were like they found it and they were going to release it on a certain day instead of telling everybody up front about which accounts were affected. It was like 1.2 billion, like you said. I thought that was kind of weird that they just kind of say, hey, we have the information, but we're going to wait a few days to make this grand presentation about it.
I think that happens with a lot of those data dumps too. Like personally, because I've run across not me
Yeah.
personally, I've run across stashes before where someone kind of someone puts out a shout or someone talks about it on a forum that I'm in, and and yeah, sometimes it's legit. It's legitimate. Like there actually is this like trove of servers that are just either that have already been leveraged and someone's sampling the data. Like, well, here's the password. If you want to try to like look at some of the data, or there's a box out there that's totally unencrypted that you can just SSH directly into and it's one of those things like how many other people have actually started like leveraging this stuff already. Like if I'm seeing it, who saw this two
Yeah.
weeks ago or who saw this a month ago and has already like weaponized whatever data they found there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm sure that happens all the time. I remember, I think last year we were talking about this, or earlier this year rather. I ran into an article with something similar, but it had hotel information. I think it was behind the Marriott brand. Some of their signature hotels, they had a server that had like information on consumers and some other information that was just sitting out there that security researchers found before hackers did. And they reported to Marriott, and they kind of released a report about what they found. So yeah, that stuff's very prevalent, man. It's sitting out there all the time.
Patch your stuff.
Yeah, exactly. We need a T-shirt that says
Oh my god, that'd be a super dope logo. Well, actually, I actually have the CIP and the event tickets for SkiCon up now too. So that'll take place like next February.
February. Yeah, I
So,
remember you telling me.
so maybe that's a good shirt to have, like patch
Yeah,
it. I'll talk to Jeremiah.
that's cool. Yeah, I'm gonna try to make that too, man. It sounds like a lot of fun. Never been ski boarding or sledding or anything like that, so
You
that
don't
sounds
have
pretty
to.
fun.
I had some
Yeah,
people come up to me about this, and they're like, "Well, what if I don't want to ski or snowboard?" I'm like, "Well, you can just hang out like at the lodge and have some drinks, or I'm sure we'll set up like a networking, a networking happy hour and a network, I don't know what's the light version of happy hour for people that don't drink, but like, not that I have anything against it, but I know some people don't drink, so you don't want to have them pressure it like, hey, you got to have this shot of whiskey. But we'll set up something where it's hang out Friday night, do some. We're
mm-hmm.
gonna have fireside chats, do some night skiing, and then Saturday. I do not make good cocoa. Who said that? of, of, then Saturday during the day, do some boarding and have the talks Saturday night. So we have the CFP out. Oh, it's Dan. What's up, Dan?
What's up, man?
Dan's over at Grimm. He's doing some awesome stuff there.
Cool. Yeah, it sounds fun. I think I'm gonna try it, man. If I can get up there, I'm gonna try to at least snowboard. So I went to Gatlinburg a couple years ago, and I didn't get a chance to do it. It actually looked pretty fun. So they had this mountain that was kind of like with fake snow, or whatever. It actually looked pretty real and pretty cool. But they had the ability to ski and snowboard and everything. I didn't get a chance to do it, so maybe this time in February I get a chance to get up there and do that. So sounds cool.
Oh, and Philip Wiley just jumped in the room. He's over at Dallas Hackers. What's up, Phil?
Cool. What's up, guys? Awesome. Well, as you know, Disney Plus came out about 2 weeks ago. Everybody's been going pretty crazy about it, including myself because I have kids. I had to get it. Um, they came into the streaming game about 2 weeks ago, but within 10 hours of going live, they actually were already facing account hacks with its subscriber accounts. So basically, there were people trying to log into the devices, Roku, Apple TV, whatever, trying to watch Disney Plus, and they were getting kicked out. But also, they were getting emails saying your password has been reset, this, that, and other. Sometimes multiple emails saying the same thing or whatever. This happened to there's no definite number about how many accounts this happened to, but basically this happened because a lot of those accounts use the same credentials that they use for other websites, and more than likely the hackers found that information through like a pastebin or just some other site that had breached information and just went to town on Disney Plus subscriber accounts. One lady, she actually paid for the 3 year subscription, which I think is like I think between 70 and 90 something bucks, and she was locked out, and she was complaining about it. A lot of these accounts are being,
That's not funny. Sorry, that's not
yeah,
funny.
it's crazy. So I went with a month to month, but my password was strong. So, but a lot of these people, man, they were using the same passwords over and over again. I'm sure, I call it the snowball effect. Once you find it here, they're probably using it for like banking, insurance, whatever else. They're probably using the same credentials. That's the big no-no for anybody, that's online. A lot of these accounts are being sold on the dark web for as low as $3 a bundle. Some of them are as high as $11 a bundle, but it's actually more expensive than the actual $6.99 a month. But a lot of these sites were found on the dark web on Russian forums, just different prices, like I mentioned. This happened also because Disney initially rolled out two-factor authentication, which is big. Like, wow,
They have a massive team. That's surprising. Like a
yeah,
massive infosec team.
exactly. So they're probably just focused on trying to get it out there and not really thinking about this. But unfortunately, within 10 hours of it going live, this happened, right? So a lot of people were complaining on Twitter and social media. They were just showing how they were unable to get into their accounts and receiving random emails about it being locked out. And um, some of the subject lines were like, "Your Disney account has been changed." Just imagine seeing that over and over again all day. That's kind of frustrating. So other screenshots showed the Disney Plus accounts being sold on the dark web. Like I said, they actually showed one threat intel feed that showed like basically some information in JSON format showing how where it was coming from and just some of the things involved with that particular account. And again, this is largely fault due to the lack of two-factor authentication and also consumers using the same password over and over again. So that's one thing we want to tell people is that if you have multiple online accounts, it's always good practice to have a strong password, number one, but also number two, two-factor if the site does have it, and also not using the same password. So I ran across a site a couple years ago. I think it's called Two Factor or something, and it actually has different categories that you can verify with different vendors to see if they have two-factor authentication, like it has social media, banking, insurance, whatever. It's a pretty cool site, and you can click on the category, and like if the vendor doesn't have two-factor authentication, there's a button on there to like send an email to them to request two-factor authentication. So I thought that was pretty cool.
We were speaking about this at Boston Security Meetup last Thursday. So remember how that slowdown happened? I don't know if you were affected by this. So like last week when they unveiled Disney Plus, they unveiled it in like AWS one East 1A. So the East region essentially is where the test bed is for any like product development. It appears that way. So like any type of product development or big rollout, they roll it out in East for some reason. I have no idea why. But if you like for the company I'm at during the day, we had like a pretty significant slowdown, and I hopped on Twitter just to see if anyone else had anything else going on, like something similar. And there were like multiple people on Twitter. They were like, "Hey, what the heck's going on? Like our environment is like at a crawl." So there were so many people that rushed to sign up for Disney Plus that it essentially like reduced the network load for AWS and that particular region by I don't know how much of a percent. Like it was something enough that there was so many people, enough people that saw it and complained about it. I guess you could put it that way.
Yeah. I'm looking at the chat now. I saw somebody ask what do you think the source of the Disney account compromise was. Basically, just lack of two-factor, and then also, like I said earlier, just people using the same password. So that was an easy attack for those guys that were going to lose the account. So, but yeah, I wasn't affected by that slowdown because I actually downloaded it a little bit after midnight that night and went to bed, and then I didn't touch it again until I got home from work that evening. So I haven't had any hiccups with it. And The Mandalorian, by the way, is a good show. Everybody's seen it.
What is that? Oh, is that the
The
Star?
Mandalorian.
That's the Star Wars one, right?
Yeah, yeah, it's pretty good. So it's on episode 3. It comes out every Friday. They didn't do the Netflix thing when they have a new show come out. You got all 8 episodes right there. So not a lot of people are getting used to weekly release episodes. But I haven't experienced any issues with Disney Plus as far as my account or the technicalities with it. It's been pretty smooth for me.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I haven't used it yet. My wife has it for our baby, but yeah, I haven't touched it yet, man. All right. Well, I know we had mentioned that we have another special guest tonight. I'm actually pretty excited about Darwin. One, he makes me laugh. He's just like but he's also like an all around just like solid dude. But he's like low key funny.
He's sharp too, man. I enjoy talking to him.
Yeah, so let's hear what Darwin's up to, man. All right, welcome back, everyone. Thanks for tuning in again to another episode of Intrusion Diversity System, or IDS. I'm your host, O'Shea Bowens, or Sir Mudblood.
And I'm Doug Bryant, or CyberGent_101 at Twitter.
At the Twitters.
Yes, sir.
uh, so today we have another wonderful guest, a young brother that's making his thing and doing his thing in cyber. I met this guy at this orphanage when I was volunteering. He was a nice gentleman. We were handing out soup together, and then he started dropping knowledge on me. That's not totally true. I just think that'd be like an awesome intro story. To have like, hey, I met this guy at this like soup kitchen, and we started doing awesome work together.
You drawing me in, man.
I know, right? It's like, get him. But today we have Darwin Salazar, awesome guy. I personally vouch for him. So luckily he made some time for us out of his busy schedule to join and drop some gems and kind of just share his story. How you doing, Darwin?
I'm doing pretty well. Thank you guys for having me.
No, thanks for coming, man, for sure.
Yeah, no problem, man.
Where are you located?
It's a funny story. So I'm in the smallest state in the country and in the capital, so Providence, Rhode Island.
That's right next to me. So I'm in Boston. You're in Rhode Island. I was just there like a couple of weeks ago at Pell Center. I know you do a lot of work with the Pell Center over at Salve Regina too, right?
Right. Yeah. So I started out as an intern there, and I did some cybersecurity public policy work there, helping out the former chief of cybersecurity here in the state, Mr. Steinmetz. I forget his first name, but he was the first chief of cybersecurity for the state. And I also worked with Francesca, very closely with Francesca. And my tenure there was just a short 9 months, but I did learn a lot. And it was one of the 7 internships that I was lucky to have throughout my undergrad career.
Yeah, Francesca's awesome. Like, I think I think you introduced me to her, didn't you? Like, I think it was you that introduced me to Francesca.
Correct.
Yeah.
And so basically the first event where you spoke at the Pell Center, I know that you've spoken at about 2 or 3 now. I believe I was the host for that one, if it's the first one, if I'm thinking back correctly. And it was pretty engaging. And that was part of the event series for Rhode Island corporate cybersecurity initiative started up by the governor, Gina Raimondo. And so that started up back in 2014, and I believe it was capped off with the final event, which you just spoke at, that you were referring to a couple of weeks back. So congrats on that.
Yeah, thank you. That was really fun. I believe the individual that was hosting the event was the I want to say commander or captain of the Joint Cyber Task Force for the state troopers, which I didn't even know that existed. So it's like each time I go there, I learn something like totally new from like left field.
Right. Yeah. And so although Rhode Island is very small, I would say they're ahead of the game when it comes to security as a state. And so one of our state representatives is Jim Langevin, who has done great work and has made many strides on a national level with cybersecurity. Actually, don't want to speak exactly to his tenure, but I think he's been in office for about like 5-6 years. And it's insane if you look up, go on Google and just look up Representative Jim Langevin and see the work that he's literally has partnered with folks from California and Texas and putting out bills for cybersecurity onto the national level. So he's a great guy to kind of have as an advocate for cybersecurity for our state. So.
And being there, is that kind of how you kind of began to, like, is that where you noticed like you wanted to move into like cybersecurity? Like, how did that happen? Like when that kind of spark hit and you decided to, move into this professionally?
That's a great question. So I started out kind of like as a gamer, right? So I played a ton of Halo 3 for tournaments, Call of Duty 4, Modern Warfare 2. So on Xbox Live, we had a close niche of friends, and we called ourselves elite. And then folks used to join our group parties, and if they got too annoying to us, we would sometimes kick them out and even like turn off their Xbox through these several hacks on Xbox Live. So that's initially how I got exposed to it. But once I was a senior in high school, back in 2014, I don't want to date myself, but one of my best friends did his senior presentation on the dark web, and I did mine on cyberbullying. And so him doing his on the dark web and actually showing me hands-on how to get on there really opened my eyes to to how vast the internet is and everything that's going on kind of like on the other side of the internet. And so with tying that back to cyberbullying as well, I kind of saw the impact that it was having on kids. Although the term cyberbullying was never used, it was literally kids putting up fights and just putting up fights on the internet of kids getting beat up and then trolling them, literally saying, "Oh, you got beat up." Especially in the inner city, there was a lot of cyberbullying going on where I grew up, because it's like inner city and all that stuff. But I don't even want to get into that.
No, all good. So you mean like people like recording the videos and then like sharing it with like the school?
Just putting it up online, and then other kids coming back to school and saying, "Oh, you got beat the heck up," and so like cyberbullying turning into actual bullying in school.
Okay.
And so we did. So I did my senior presentation on cyberbullying, and then I went and presented it to middle school students right over next door at Roger Williams Middle School, which is probably one of the worst middle schools in Providence, and it's in the South Side. So surrounded by kind of like a low socioeconomic area. And so that resonated a lot with the students and the teachers and the professors there. And so cybersecurity and kind of like the other side of the internet, as we called it back then, really resonated with me a lot. And when I received a full ride to attend Salve Regina University in Newport, I didn't see anything outright with cybersecurity. There weren't any courses available to undergrad students for cybersecurity. But what I did notice is that there was a grad program called under the name of Homeland Security, and within there you could take like forensics courses, so digital forensics, mobile forensics, and network forensics. And the pre-track, the kind of like what the most general track that folks took into the Homeland Security program was pre-law. So I actually ended up getting my bachelor's in pre-law and my master's in Homeland Security, where I was exposed to more cybersecurity and technical courses. But even before that, going a little bit back, I had several of my peers and we were saying, we won't be exposed to cybersecurity or any technical courses or any technical content in the next 2 to 3 years. Why not start something ourselves? And that's when we started the cybersecurity club at Salve Regina University and kind of just ran with it. And we started competing in the National Cyber League, which is, I would say, 50-50 blue team and 50-50 red team. You had like password cracking, network traffic analysis, and it really allowed you to put to use some of the things that you see on the internet and read about, and that Kali Linux distro. So we're talking like your Wiresharks, your NCAT. And so it was very helpful in that sense. And it also allowed us to get a scouting report. So National Cyber League, after the end of every season, it provides you with a scouting report on how you performed on each area. So there's usually 10 areas, and it shows you where your strengths and weaknesses are. And so when you go and interview, let's say for an internship or a full-time position, you can say, these are my strong suits, and this is kind of like where I'm good at. But now you start developing a profile that you could show and speak to concretely to potential employers. And so that was very helpful for all of us. And so once I got the master's, I was already in kind of like in a full-time role, but throughout undergrad, I also did internships ranging the insurance, financial, and public policy with Pell Center, and the podcast industry with Security Weekly. So I guess my start with cybersecurity, with my relationship with cybersecurity, started back senior year or right around junior year of high school. Although I didn't have like an official cybersecurity role until I had an internship with the Pell Center as a cybersecurity associate researcher.
Nice.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. You were saying a lot of good things, and with the cyberbullying, man, that's actually a good thing that you brought it up. So, that's kudos to you for that. I was listening to you talk, and a lot of things that you were talking about kind of dealt with, you needing more people to help you out to build things, especially if you take an initiative to build out something that didn't exist. A lot of times there's strength in numbers, right? So if you have more people helping you out, your objectives get done way faster. With that being said, What are some of the benefits you think that come from networking and attending conferences that have multiple numbers of people? How can networking and attending conferences help somebody?
Absolutely, man. Great question. And I think there's a quote that says it takes a village, right? Whether it's to raise someone properly or to create industry leading product or one of the top companies in the world, it really takes a village. It's not just the CEO or the person that's put up in the front of magazines or the person that takes all the shine for it. There's usually a supporting cast of members, which are probably as important or not, or if not even more important than that person, taking the shine for it. And so when it comes to networking, really, and as someone coming up in the industry and breaking into it, you really need folks to tell you how to maneuver through the game, right? And especially when it comes to cybersecurity, which is such a new field, and there's so many opportunities out there. You want someone to help you. And not only that, the cybersecurity industry is vast. And so you could go from threat hunting to red teaming to open source intelligence, or you could work on the public policy side. You could do many things when it comes to cybersecurity. And so trying to find your passion, let's say your passion is cybersecurity, but what within security? And so having mentors, I think, is a very important aspect, right? That you gain from networking and attending conferences. So throughout my years, there's also been folks that have not only helped me on the professional side, which I've met through professional conferences, but folks that have told me, like, don't ever get yourself in a position to pay child support.
Good advice.
Right. Yeah. Don't make big purchases right out of the gate. Like, although you're making near six figures, don't go out and buy a house on your first or second year, or buy that BMW or Mercedes Benz. Like, build your foundation out and stack your money. And so when it comes to having mentors, it doesn't only help on, emotional intelligence within the office, or what technical pursuits to go after, what certificates to go after. It actually also helps on the personal side, right? And building you up as a woman or as a man of character that, within 5 to 10 years, they can vouch for you and sponsor you for leadership, regardless of which organization you're in. And then also to the point of, I guess, grad school and continued education, right? If you want to go for an MBA or you want to go to law school and you've networked and have been mentored by someone, let's say Devon Bryan is someone who I would call a mentor, and he was the former CISO of the Federal Reserve Bank for our country. And so I've nurtured and grown a relationship with him over the past 2 years where I'd feel comfortable going to him for a letter of recommendation. And so to be able to say that you can go to folks like that is pretty amazing. And the only reason why I met him is because I attended the ICMCP conference. And so I think getting out, although we're in a very technical industry and some folks may be introverted, I think it's very helpful to sometimes get out of your shell, right? And meet folks, just go out with no expectations. And if you meet folks, that's amazing. But at the end of the day, you're still learning at these conferences. So attending conferences, even if you have to pay out of pocket or your company is not covering those costs, especially like a DEF CON, which is $300 just for the entrance, and then you could Airbnb, it could turn out fairly cheaply. I think it is worth, going out on a limb and trying to get the most out of those conferences, whether it's networking, learning things. Because at the end of the day, it's an investment in yourself. And the only way to when it comes to networking, there's no specific formula. It's just go out with no expectations. That would be my biggest point out that I would make to folks who consider themselves to be introverted. So
no, that's actually really good. You dropped a lot of jewels, man. I think more importantly, the mentorship piece, right? That's really important. And I think a lot of times you would gain that from going to those conferences and, networking, obviously. In my career, man, the mantra I live by is that, if somebody's trying to get in, aside from networking and attending conferences, discover a concentration, right? Try to figure out what path you want to go down first. Find a mentor, humble yourself during that mentorship process. Practice your craft and learn from defeat. And when I say learn from defeat, if you get stuck with something, ask somebody or just, use Google to do research to figure out how to fix whatever you're working on. If you apply for a role, If you don't get it, practice resilience and understand why you didn't get the role, and just study and sharpen your skills in that area to potentially get a similar role. It's basically all about perspective, right? So if you can see it, you can be it.
Yeah, and there's so many opportunities to network nowadays. As long as you're like I feel like if you're like in close like a major city, I shouldn't even say major city. Like if you're in an area that has some type of meetup related to security, like I strongly advise like just checking that out. Like most of the things I've learned, most of the things I've learned that helped me in my career didn't come through like formal. It wasn't through like formal channels, or like from studying from a cert. Even though I have certs, but a lot of it just came from people to people, like asking people. Like when I get stuck, like there's someone called Paul Melson that does like malware research and reverse engineering, like turning and like asking other individuals or pointing to people that I could like pivot from, like when I get stuck. So it's not, I feel like a lot of times, like, I don't know if it's like a life thing, but it's like when you feel like you want to give up, like having that extra push kind of pushes you to like, go a little bit further. And I feel like if you have that in security, it's nothing is guaranteed, right? But if you have allies, it can make your life like so much easier on the professional and personal side, because there's just so much that can be done in this field, and it's so vast, and there's so many different areas of like technical abilities and so many different areas of study that it's impossible to know it all. But having those different pivot points from a personal relationship with different individuals, it allows you to learn a bit more. Like I always say, like I suck at pen testing, but I know some awesome pen testers. So when I have questions around from a defensive perspective, me as a blue teamer, when I have questions around different techniques from an offensive perspective, I kind of have an idea of who I can turn to and kind of bounce those ideas off of. And that's mostly just from like purely interpersonal communications, just human to human. Hey man, how are you doing? Let's grab a beer or a coffee, and I want to pick your brain about something. Yeah,
right. And I think there's 2 points that I grasped from kind of what you and Doug have just said. Right, there's that aspect of resiliency, but also that aspect of curiosity and finding your niche and what your actual passion within cybersecurity is, or your specialty. I mean, initially you may want to start out as a generalist when it comes to cybersecurity, learn the entire kind of like the notion of cloud security and what it is, how exactly our instances spun up, why the heck is there a data center in the Sahara Desert? Why is there a data center in Antarctica and things of that nature? Just letting your curiosity roam until you find your passion. And I think also that resiliency aspect, right? So when on the pen testing side, I've done, I did an internship with Ford Motors as a red teamer. And then I also did some fellowship in Israel, learning how to web app pen test and mobile app pen test. And so one of the things that I learned there is not all cut and dry, right? And so a lot of the times it may just be something's wrong. You didn't connect to the proper port, and so that's why you don't have any traffic coming through. So the only way that you're able to find that out, and so the fellowship that I did in Israel, it was kind of like a hands-off learning approach teaching approach that they took, where they let you try and figure it out yourself first before you went and asked the professor for help. And so when the professor went over, he would ask you, what have you tried to try solving this issue that you're having? And so that was a very great way of learning, right? That resiliency component, because when you're inside of someone's network or inside of the terminal, inside of somebody's box, you're not finding things. You may have hit the proper thing, you just haven't unzipped it, or whatever the case may be. If you just have to make sure that you're flipping over every single rock and opening every single door on, like, let's say, pen test engagements and things of that nature. So I think curiosity and resiliency when it comes to cybersecurity, whether it's in a very technical role or even in a more, let's say, where you're dealing with GRC, governance, risk, and compliance, I think curiosity and resiliency goes a very long way. And then also the like having the courage to take risk, because I think being a person that enjoys taking risk in a field that is so open and vast and has so many open positions and room for growth, I think when you take risk, other people and calculated risk. I'm not saying go do something dumb or go get arrested or whatever the case may be, But when you take calculated risk within a corporate environment or a role, leadership may say this person is very smart and someone who we trust in a leadership position because of his judgment or her judgment. And so when it comes to taking risk, if you're not taking any risk and you're almost like a sheep within the corporate environment, it'll take you a little bit longer to climb up through the ranks. But that's okay, Brad, because learn as much as you can within your role before you get brought into a different role or get brought up into a higher position. When you take risks, people take note of that and say, this is someone who's not afraid. And so in a field that is so vast and there's so many open positions, and every organization today needs cybersecurity. So I think it'd be dumb for the folks in cybersecurity today to stick to their guns and only to what they know and not try learning new things or going on a whim on what they truly believe in. And making decisions and talking to management, cost-cutting measures, or whatever the case may be when it comes to cybersecurity. There's so much room out there to take risk. And so curiosity, resilience, and kind of the ability to take risk is what I would tell someone breaking into the industry to kind of develop.
Yeah, I think one of the best things, like, at least I speak from a personal perspective, and also what I kind of relay to, like a person that I'm mentoring currently or junior individuals that I mentor within a role, is try to find a project that's ongoing or upcoming within the company that's a bit outside of your skill sets or your current knowledge base. Like, try to get involved and introduce security into that area. Like, one of the areas, like, I'm not a strong I don't really focus on application security all that often, but I try to throw my hat into the ring when I know we have a new release or a new feature that's upcoming or some added new functionality into like our current an application that I can maybe just kind of poke my head in the door and just say like, hey, are you guys thinking about security? Like, how are we handling, our traffic? Is everything going over TLS, or how are we sanitizing our data when we take API calls? Like, when you start just kind of like throwing your hand up, I think that does help you kind of stand out in your career, because people don't see you as this one-sided individual. I think a lot of times with security, we're kind of seen as like the no guys or the no people or the slow production down people, or slow down this feature release people, because we're typically that roadblock that stated, well, hey, this isn't 100% secure. You need to go back to the drawing board, instead of throwing up our hands and offering to lend our expertise to help them get past that hurdle that we've already identified, and then sharing how we reached our conclusion to better help them the next time around. Because if you become that roadblock once, simply they're just going to go around you. Like, I don't know if anyone else has seen that inside of a role, but when you stand in front of, the application team or some of your system administrators, and you're seen as the hard no in the room, eventually they just stop communicating with you and just try to go around you. So I feel like, and I've learned that the hard way, and so I feel like if you put yourself out there as this open individual that's willing to like lend yourself to different projects, even though it's not your core areas, like, you are kind of seen as a person that's taking risks within the company and someone they want to communicate with. And most likely you'll become someone that they confide in, pull you to the side and say, hey, we're thinking about this. What are your thoughts in regards to like this particular potential risk? So I think, like being adventurous, and actually throwing yourself to the wind and becoming a bit more approachable from a security side is such like a huge benefit in your career.
Roadblocks and people going around your security, that doesn't happen.
I know, right? They always come to us.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah, you guys said something pretty good though. Like, I know for me, you were saying how you trying to, better yourself. Coming back to the role I'm in now, I actually threw myself into, security automation and orchestration, and also cloud security. So very new subjects for me, but I'm actually, excited about it and learning about it, and just trying to, beef up my skill set for the most part.
Keep it up. And you mentioned, Darwin, like you were like a couple of the things that you're interested in and how you got into security. So where are you kind of concentrating now? Like what are you working on currently?
Yeah, and due to the nature of the program that I'm working on the project, I can't mention much, but I would say I'm covering mostly the IoT and medical device side and its connection to the cloud. So a bit of everything, end-to-end device to cloud connection. And so when you guys mentioned roadblocks in security, I go back to kind of like the agile development methodology and working in the SDLC environment, right?
Yeah.
You have DevOps folks. There's so many tools out there when it comes to automation and cloud orchestration and automated releases and builds.
Yeah.
And so when it comes to security vetting it from a corporate perspective, especially working with like a large conglomerate, that does tend to happen. So you do certainly have to find that balance. So I just wanted to touch on that. But yeah, today I'm just really working on IoT devices and cloud security, which kind of ties back to my previous internship. And I really enjoy what I'm doing today. And I don't think there's enough people doing IoT security. I really wish there were more folks jumping into this industry, because when we start thinking about like smart cities, smart connectivity inside of hospitals, and then also critical infrastructure with, you know, nuclear labs and things of that nature, of that level of criticality, where it could, you know, having something exploited could actually cause a person their life, or a number of people their lives. I think we should have more people jumping on IoT security. So that's so whoever's listening to this episode, that's my call to you. Please look into IoT security. It's a very fun field to be in.
Yeah, we need it because we need to stop Judgment Day, right? Before that happens. Cyber9. Gotta stop that. Yeah, we have to stop that. But yeah, I think with this episode and the episode before you, Gus Clark, he mentioned IoT. So that's actually something that's, you know, on the rise. And yeah, after these 2 episodes, for sure, it's going to be a lot more noticeable.
Yeah, you just missed Gus.
Yeah.
I think he could talk about this for like days.
For real.
I'll have to connect with him offline then. But yeah, what we're trying to prevent is, you know, nation state actor hacking into, let's say, a bunch of Teslas and sending them to one location. Or even worse, we may have a terrorist controlling an automated vehicle remotely and having something extremely dangerous inside that vehicle, which could, you know, cause worst case scenario, hundreds of people's or thousands of people's lives, let's say like in a crowded place, in a crowded area. And so part of my background is that master's in Homeland Security and trying to prevent things of that nature. And so I've looked into that, the connection between IoT security and then also Homeland Security. And there's some pretty scary scenarios. But I know that there's folks within the government that are working on that, and there's several programs out there. So we can all rest assured. But we're trying to also stop that, the killer robot scenario, right?
Majority of the time when I hear those conversations, it's I don't know if you listen to Elon Musk a lot. Like I listened to I've listened to multiple interviews from him, but like he's a very like optimistic person or pessimistic person at times. But it's also when you listen to him speak about like Skynet or potential Skynet capabilities of AI, he goes like extremely dark, and I'm like, dude, you're scaring the hell out of me. Like I don't get scared.
Oh man!
But he takes this ominous tone, and it's like it's the end of the world.
Well, you also have to think, right? The reason the way that this technology is created is by humans, right? And so humans have biases, but humans are like someone programming, let's say for Project Maven, which was kind of like a partnership between the DoD and Google, right? Let's say a Google engineer has just came back from vacation or from whatever company, it doesn't even matter, on whatever program, has just came back from vacation, and it's a Monday morning and they're facing these strict timelines, and now they're developing this code while they're extremely groggy. And so vulnerabilities may inject themselves into that code for one reason or another, whatever the case may be. And so now we have something that's handling very critical missions, or if it's, let's say, robots that are serving the public and they have these vulnerabilities, then one, they could be exploited, but also they could start, when it comes to artificial intelligence, it's all about also the data that you're feeding that program. And so, and the interpretation of that data falls back onto how that robot or AI program was developed. And so if you have someone who was tired or didn't use the proper judgment for whatever reason, they had bias or whatever the case may be, it could get very, very funky when we're talking about public servant robots or drones out in missions overseas and things of that nature. And so I think Elon Musk is right when he uses that very pessimistic voice tone and kind of mentality, because even today, everything is like China in a tournament of hacking. I think it was like it was in China. So Safari, Chrome, web browsers were breached. And this articles, well, they weren't breached, they were hacked in a kind of like in a capture the flag type of hacking event held over in China. And this was covered by ZDNet. And so if we're thinking you have these top-notch companies investing so much into securing these browsers, and they still have vulnerabilities. And we've even seen it with Android and also Apple and Macs in recent, vulnerabilities. It's still to this day. I mean, we've been focusing on security now, I would say 15, 20 years, and there's still vulnerabilities. We can only imagine what the future may bring.
So something we ask of our guests, this is it's a bit of a doozy or a thinker, but we like to kind of towards the end of the podcast always ask this. But so if you could write a white paper explaining your journey into cybersecurity, what would that title be?
I think that's a great question. And so the way that I would answer that is the title of my white paper would be "The Journey is Often Better Than the Destination," right? And so it may sound cliche, but while I was in undergrad and in grad school partially, I was thinking like, I can't wait to get a full-time role, and I can't wait to finally be established in this industry that's booming and there's so much going on. I can't wait to continue learning or whatever the case may be. And so one thing that I took for granted while going through undergrad is that kind of camaraderie, right, of being around peers on the same mission when it comes to cybersecurity. And so I think creating that cybersecurity club for our university and spreading cyber awareness and competing in some of these competitions, I think that was some of my greatest moments on my journey into the position that I'm in now. And I kind of took that for granted because I was always focused on what's the next thing, what's my next internship, what's the next conference I could attend, what new tools are out there for me to use. And so I think, and it's applicable not only to folks in cybersecurity, or it could also be applicable to self-development and also someone's financial, side of life. And so that's something that I tend to now take more into consideration, right? The journey is often better than the destination. And so just that continued learning process and just trying to learn more about it really pushes me to learn more about what I'm working on rather than taking it for face value and saying, like, instead of producing the work, I really want to dissect what I'm working on so that I can learn about it and take it with me to whatever next step my career is in, or once I get promoted or whatever the case may be. And so I guess that would also be a call to action with folks, right? Do not be so caught up with moving up or the next step in your life that you miss out on being present in the present moment, and really juicing or milking the opportunity that you have in front of you right now. So.
That's a good point. It's always good to live in the moment.
Deep.
So, yeah. I know, right? That's good stuff, man.
Well, yeah. Well, thanks for coming on the show, man. We definitely appreciate it. We'll definitely have to have you come back when you can talk about your non-secret project. I was like, this dude's at Area 51. He's like, this IoT thing's a cover. Like he's actually working at Area 51 or something. Yeah, I know, right? But yeah, Darwin, we're gonna link up, man. Talk about some cloud stuff, man.
Absolutely, yeah. Maybe like within a year or two, once I'm a bit more established in the industry, and once the program and the product that I'm working on is released to the public, and I could actually come back and talk about it and point to it, I think that'll be a great time to come back, and we could also do a nice celebration to everything that I'm working on right now. I think getting it, I was kind of like thrown into the sharks to swim in my first role, and I think I wouldn't have had it any other way. And so,
same here, man. Yeah, that's how it goes, man. So, yeah, but also, thank you for believing in us. You're talking about next year, so that's good. We'll probably be on season 10 or something like that, but that's cool.
Right. Doors always open. Yeah. Like we're always like, there is no such thing as a one-time guest. Like it's all a community. So it's, the more you want to share, the more we want to hear it.
For sure.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys for having me on. I certainly appreciate the opportunity, and I'm truly humbled to kind of be interviewed by folks of your caliber. And so certainly looking forward to coming on it sometime in the near future.
Yeah, man. We'll stay linked up on LinkedIn and Twitter and all that kind of stuff and just communicate. That's cool.